everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Young Professionals Podcast. Sarge, who are we speaking with today?
Luke, today we're speaking with Naveen Perera. Naveen is a graduate at Unilever, currently rotating through the customer development team as part of the Unilever Future Leaders program. Born and raised in Melbourne, Naveen started his tertiary education journey at Monash University, studying an undergraduate biomedical science degree. Naveen soon discovered his keen interest for all things finance and decided to make a sea change and move to Sydney, where he completed a Masters of Finance at UNSW. Naveen has been in Sydney for 4 years now and is a big advocate for finding things outside his comfort zone and constantly challenging himself. Naveen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Well, thanks for coming on, mate. You're in the customer development team at Unilever. What is the customer development team?
Yeah, so the customer development team is another word for sales. It's a weird one because when I initially entered this space, I thought we were going to be doing a lot of selling, but it's very different, right? So a lot of it's like commercial strategy and it's very commercial based. So what we're really trying to do is develop customers over the long term, hence customer development. Breaks down into a number of different things, right? So you've got field sales, you can work with the customer teams, there's category teams as well. Very diverse range of roles in the customer development space. A lot of people wouldn't have heard about. So keen to have a chat about that.
Well, just to unpack one of those terms you mentioned, field sales, I think you said. What are field sales?
Yeah, so that was actually my first ever rotation. So when I first joined the business, I was supposed to do 6 months out in the field, as they say. So what that is, basically they'll give you a car, and a phone, and they'll give you your own territory as well.
Do you get a laptop?
Yeah, laptop as well. So you get real excited about that when you come into the business. So I got a territory out in Sydney's outer west, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so out near like Parramatta and I don't even remember the suburbs anymore, but I looked after about 20 IGAs. So what it really is, mate, it's going into the stores. These are kind of your customers that you look after. So you go into the stores. Unilever, as you know, is always they've always got new products, right? So what you're really trying to do is at a store level cut in these new products. So trying to convince these store managers, a lot of the time who own the store, that you want to start ranging some new products. And a lot of the time they're just like, mate, what are you doing here? Like, I'm very busy. You got to kind of go in and start talking to people. And a lot of the time they don't want you there. And then again, like with the shelves, right, there's a very particular way the business want it organized. So you're trying to, and it's all organized very strategically. So based on a lot of insights and that sort of thing.
And just on that, why do we want the shelves organized a particular way in a store?
Yeah, so it's part of a. So for example, let's take deodorants, right? So deodorants would be a category, and in that category, like it gets. They start segmenting it a little bit, right? But you've got different types of deodorants. Like you might have an antiperspirant or a roll-on, and they want, the roll-on next to the antiperspirant, or they don't want it on the same shelf, and they want the variant, like the flavors, to be in a certain row, that sort of thing. It's all based on a lot of insight. It's called like flow of shelf, and they want us to say we're like 60% market share. They want us to roughly have 60% of the shelf. So a lot of that sort of thing. So you go in and you start playing with the shelves, and, a lot of the time these guys like, don't touch the shelves. It's really about developing those relationships with the store managers. So you'll drive around, you might go to one store, spend a couple of hours there. Sometimes they're really receptive. They might be like, yeah, can you just redo the whole shelf? I had one guy who tried to get me to do the whole store. And I was like, mate, I can't touch the products that I don't want to touch the products that aren't Unilever. And he was trying to get me to redo the chips and that sort of stuff. And I was like, we don't even make chips.
Mate, Naveen, just on that, not to butt in, but do you want to just give a bit of context and color as to what Unilever's products are, and maybe explain what Unilever is? I know when I was kind of coming through high school, the only, I guess, brand awareness that I had of them was the U with the shells on the back of my deodorant can. Do you want us to explain how big Unilever is globally?
Yeah, so Unilever play in the FMCG space. So what that is, it's fast moving consumer goods. So that's anything. Best way to think of it is if you walk into a Woolworths or Coles, that's like, it's retail, and that's what it is. So Unilever are one of the key players, along with, Nestle, and Procter and Gamble. So basically what it is Unilever, have certain categories we play in. So some of our key big business areas are like, we do a lot of ice cream, we do a lot of foods, and we also do a lot of health, beauty and personal care. So when you break that down, we own a lot of the deodorants market, play in a lot of skincare, skin cleanse, laundry, ice cream, both, in home. So like all the tubs, and stuff you'll find in the freezers at Woolworths, and then out of home in the petrol and convenience space, or the zoos, wherever you might go. So what we do is we own the brands. We manufacture it, and our job is to manufacture it, put it on the shelves at a right price point, all that sort of stuff, and get people enjoying the stock.
Do you have a favourite Unilever product?
For me, it's probably the Ben & Jerry's ice cream. So, for us, sometimes really lucky when, things are about to expire and you can take home, like a 12-pack or whatever it is.
Unilever's stock turnover is so fast, that wouldn't happen very often though, would it?
Not this year, definitely not this year. But I did have a few opportunities last year. So, really lucky. Like sometimes I'll take home a few cans of deodorant and that sort of thing. But, obviously you don't want to be taking home a full case or something.
Mate, I'd be happy with the car and the phone, to be honest. I'll go and get my own deodorant. No, I think it's interesting, particularly for younger students. It might not be, interested in commerce maybe, or have got exposure to how big business works, or how that operates. I know kind of the first time that I realised that Fanta was owned by Coke, it was like, okay, I kind of get this now. And I think Unilever is a big one where you can really get a perspective that a lot of the brands that you might know or buy often are probably owned by kind of one big brand, and in this case that's Unilever. Mate, do you want to run us through, you've obviously described what your current role or rotating position in the grad program is. Do you want to walk us through what it was like to get into the grad program at Unilever, kind of how many people are in the program, what the recruitment process was like, and all of that? Yeah, for sure. So for me, I was really, really lucky. When I was in my first year of studying up in Sydney, I was really lucky to intern at Unilever. And at the time, I was very much like you. It came up on the, what do we call it? What's that green, that green page?
Grad Connect.
Grad Connect. Yeah, I saw it on Grad Connect, and I didn't really know what it was at the time, and clicked it, and I did a bit of research, and I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. I'd also love to get an internship this summer. So thought I'd apply, and kind of went through the process. I think, a lot of people are probably familiar with the process. Do what do we do? Do some like quizzes and that sort of thing online, and then move into a video interview. So those are always fun, but you get quite used to it. So obviously prepare as well as you can. And then it was really the assessment center. And I think that's where I think it's the most fun, and it's also the best place to differentiate yourself as well. So I think we had a half day for the internship. So a lot of it was, talking to some of the directors, answering a lot of questions, doing some case studies. And I think it's just really good to have an interest in business, and, read the news and that sort of thing.
When you were coming to the assessment center, you obviously, I would assume, preparing to, just read a bit more about the business and, have some talking points if you got into a conversation with someone. Were you learning a lot when you were reading about Unilever for the first time? You're like, oh, they've got all these different teams and I can do all this different stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And look, it's for me to really understand the Unilever business, like it took ages. So when I say ages, like I had to be within the business for like probably 6 months till I actually felt like I knew the industry somewhat. So I realize now, like when I was actually in the assessment center, like I didn't know very much. And thank God, like there's only like a set amount of questions they can ask, right? Like they can't get too deep. But I obviously did my research as much as you can, but there's only so much you can find online. I didn't really understand how like the different functions interact and that sort of thing. And I think that's not what they're expecting. But yeah, really, I think, I learned a lot doing a lot of research, and most of it was just what they stand for outside of making money. And that was one of the things that really resonated with me. And obviously, in the interview, that was one of the key talking points.
I think on that as well, when you do your research, it builds your confidence too, because you feel like you have a better understanding. And I think one of the themes that's come across in a lot of these conversations is that if you're confident about what you're doing and you go in with a bit of confidence, then you'll perform so much better and you'll enjoy it more because you feel like you should be there rather than kind of having that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, for sure. I think, for me, I just treated it like almost like an exam, right? So you don't get that much notice. Like I think for this one, I think I only got like 3 days, or maybe it was a bit longer than that. But it's just like in the past when I was just going for job interviews when I was at uni, just a customer service role or whatever, you'd probably put in 2 hours. You might just figure out what the company's about. But with these internship programs, like there's no reason why you shouldn't sit there for like a full day or two and like really sit there and think about what you're trying to do and what they might ask you.
Oh, it's a big decision. It's the first couple of years of your life potentially in terms of working, because you go in there and it's like you're not going there to leave in 6 months. Like it's a long-term thing.
Yeah. So this was like, I'm talking internships here, but I think the same applies, right? Like you really, for a lot of people, that will kind of be your first bit of exposure into big business and post-uni. So there's no reason why you shouldn't, in my opinion anyway, there's no reason why you shouldn't, spend a couple of days working through.
On that, Naveen, I totally agree with you. And it's only really with hindsight that I've added a bit more, I guess, depth to that perspective, because when you're going through my experiences when I was going through uni, it's like need to research all this stuff in heaps of detail. So I've got a lot of talking points if people are to ask me questions about the business. So it looks like I know about them. But the longer I've been in a business, it's like they don't want people interviewing you don't want you to tell them about their business that they've been working at for years and you don't actually know anything about it. It's more so you can get an idea of, hey, is this a business that I really want to work for? Yeah. Do I align with what they're about? And do you want to go into a bit more detail? You kind of touched on it just before that you really liked what Unilever was about, apart from the making money side of things.
Yeah, of course, right. I think with interviews, like a lot of people, and look, I get it. For a lot of people, when you're at uni, you want to kind of get your hands on the first thing that you can get, right? But at the same time, like looking back on it, it's almost like a bit of you're trying to strike a deal, right? They're trying to see if you're a fit, and you're also trying. I think a lot of people go in and it's like, I need to get this, but a lot of it's also, is this company a fit for me? So yeah, when I went in there, the person that interviewed me, luckily enough for me now, is a mentor for me, and she was fantastic. Like we connected straight away, and I think we almost kind of left from like an interview structure to just kind of having a chat, and that was really awesome because she was able to really just tell me a lot about the business, and for me at the time, like it was almost in all right. It was like at the time she was looking after the Woolworths account, and I was hearing about how big it was. And I was like, this is like really fascinating. And obviously that's a big part of it, right? But then they started talking about a lot of things they do outside of the business. So it's not all about So there's more to it than, really just appeasing shareholders and growing profit. So, these guys, they're really trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and what they're doing with plastics and sustainability, and really like a market leader in that space. And that's absolutely huge for me. I think business should be done with long-term sustainability in mind. And, that's something I was learning about at the time, and I was thinking, this is very exciting and I'd love to be part of it. But as I've spent more time in the business, it's something I'm really passionate about. So I think these things are important to consider as well. Very important, actually. I think we've all been at gigs where you show up and you're like, what am I doing here? I've had a couple of those. So
it's important to have that purpose and deep, like you said, deeper understanding of what's going on. And it sounds like Unilever is a fantastic corporate citizen.
Yeah, 100%. So that's one of the big focuses. And with every business decision we make, those overarching, principles or visions, they should be incorporated into the decision making. So, yeah.
On that as well, I think just thinking about it now, there's a podcast that I think both Sarge and I are very fond of, and that's How I Built This. And if anyone's interested in any kind of entrepreneurship or business in general, I definitely recommend that one. But one of them, a couple of the episodes, they're talking about a business that's in the retail kind of space, and they've recently been bought by Unilever. And that was at kind of back end of last year or the start of this year. And then COVID hit, and they both separately spoke about how Unilever, their first reaction was, no, keep all your people, make sure that all the people are safe, and we'll maintain the business. Don't worry about that. And they're obviously separate businesses, and they're both speaking about how the attitude of Unilever is to one, look after their people first, and then look after the society and environment and all of that. And then kind of profits come later. And I think it's cool that you're saying the same thing, because it clearly permeates through the whole business. And, they were talking about it from a European and US based perspective, and it's clearly here in Australia as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously Unilever is my first role out of uni, but from the sound of things, like a lot of companies have visions and missions and like very bold statements in terms of what they're going to do and what they do. So I think it's important to kind of take a step back and think about whether the business you're at is actually doing these things.
I think that's fantastic advice. Just jumping back a few steps, Naveen, keen to understand your journey into Unilever. So you studied your biomedical science degree at Monash. Do you want to take us through how that came about and whether that was something that was on your radar when you were back at school?
Yeah, so it wasn't. I think how I got to do biomed at Monash was probably just through following the herd, I guess. When I was at school, looking back, wasn't really a place I wasn't going in there to learn much. I was just, going in to play footy at lunchtime and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think following the herd, I think year 11, 12 came around, and you have to pick your subjects, and I was kind of looking around. I was like, what's everyone else doing? And at the time, I was picking physics and chemistry and all those things. And looking back, not too much interest there. So, begs the question, why did I choose those? Finished those subjects, right, and kind of got to selecting course for university. And I was like, okay, I don't really know business. I don't know anything about business really. My background so far has been in, sciences. So I was like, I really didn't know what to do. And one of my best mates was kind of like, well, I'm doing biomed, like, let's just do it. Look, honestly, like, didn't really do my research. I thought it was like a very open degree. And look, I think it is. It just wasn't what I wanted to do.
And where did you get that perspective from, that it was an open degree?
I don't know. I don't know. For some, look, I think you really need to do your research, right? Like, I think, when you first go into uni, you hear people, they go, oh, P's get degrees. And in your first year, like, you think all this stuff's right. And And the same thing with biomed. Like I was almost like, look, it's just, the first year or so I'll figure it out. But then, like first year came around and like I was in a bit of a pickle and really had to try and, find a way to get out of it.
With that as well, I think I fell into the trap of thinking, P's get degrees in first year, but then soon came to realize that degrees don't necessarily equal a job. So you really have to kind of knuckle down and make sure you do as well as you can. Yeah.
No, I feel you. So for me, so I did some postgrad study at UNSW, and to kind of get into the program, I think, whatever it was, a 75 or whatever it was, after my first year of, following this P's get degrees thing, I think it's safe to say, like, I wasn't close. So for me, like, the last 2 years of that degree, right, were just really just trying to claw that back. So I went from first year really not going into uni much at all, and just kicking back with mates, like Monday to Friday, doing whatever, to really spending, like, especially my last year, spending 9 to probably 5:30, like actually sitting in the library and studying. And that was literally trying to just claw back a bad situation. And that's the sort of, it wasn't fun. And that's the sort of situation you can find yourself in if, you're not passionate about what you're doing. Whereas I've had mates who just, went into BCom, they loved it. They were at uni all day, every day. He got through the 3 years very easily and just straight into a job. And that could have been a path, but it wasn't.
But I think a lot of people can fall into that trap of not really, I guess, not caring, but not trying as hard as you can in first year, even if you like the course. Like, I think, Sarge, you have a similar experience of that in first year.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you finish school and you go to uni, and I don't know, you're kind of like, oh, well, I've just finished school. Like, hopefully you've done pretty well, and you're pretty keen to just kick back and not do a heap. And I think when I started uni, I had this mentality of, oh, okay, well, I just won't fail. Like, it just won't happen. So, like, I wouldn't do a great deal of work, and I didn't fail. I did okay, but I wasn't trying my hardest. And I look back at that and I say, well, like, I really should have knuckled down and had a crack. And on top of that, I'd say you should also think about what you want to do and what interests you. I think when I started uni, I wasn't necessarily doing something that super interested me. It was kind of like, oh, I got X score, I'll go and do law. And maybe it's definitely not the right way to go about it.
So mate, if we're going forward a little bit, you finish your biomed degree and then have this epiphany that you like finance. Do you want to just walk us through the I guess, thinking between finishing the degree and then going, actually, I'm going to go and have a crack at something that I'm interested in, and then the move up to Sydney, because that's no small change for, quite a young person, relatively speaking.
Yeah. So, probably probably second year into that biomed degree, right? I was kind of figuring out a way to, get out of the situation. But it's one of those things, like, I didn't have that many options. The option was really just to finish the degree that I started, or to kind of drop out. And I think there's a situation where the ATAR was only valid for about a year or something. Like, I didn't want to go back to starting another bachelor's from scratch as well. I just spent 2 years, doing this biomed degree, and that's certainly an option, right? Like, for anyone in that position. For me at the time, I just didn't feel like I wanted to do that.
Just on that, why didn't you want to go and start a bachelor's again? Like, in your view, what's the difference between a bachelor's and a master's?
Look, looking back at it, like, obviously I've finished my master's now. I don't really know if there's a like, and the truth is I actually just don't know the answer. But look, I assume there is a difference. But for me, like, I don't really know, because finishing my master's, Unilever was one of the first jobs I applied for, and I just happened to get it. So I don't really, look, to be honest, I don't know, but from what I hear, there's tremendous value in having a master's. And for me, it was one of those things, right? It was like, regardless of what I did, like, I could have had it. Well, actually, I could have had like, finishing the program. So it was like, I was 2 years in, right? I could have started a bachelor's and been done in 3 years, whereas I could have done the extra year and then got a master's in a year and a half. So it was all was also thinking time wise. I was like, how do I get out of uni quicker as well? And I was like, if I can get out of uni quicker and have a master's, like it just makes more sense. So that's actually kind of how I was thinking at the time.
Naveen, do you want to walk us through in a chat before today? We were talking about how you had an opportunity to maybe get into a similar program at Lendlease, which it was working in M&A. Do you want to talk us through, I guess, what M&A is? And that's got kind of, I guess, the sex appeal of people in finance, and I want to get into M&A. Do you want to take us through the thought process there and why you ended up choosing Unilever?
Yeah. So, so for me, as I said, moved from biomed into finance. And the reason I did that was I spent the last 2 years while I was in Melbourne really trying to figure out what I like. And for me, I figured I actually knew finance was a very good option. So that's why I moved to Sydney, did my first year up there, doing my master's in finance, and it was a tough year. But it kind of got to that stage where I needed to do an internship and really get a bit of exposure. And at that time, I was really lucky to get Unilever. So you guys know how it is. It's a little bit around exam time, some of these interviews and around mid-sems, and there's a lot of applications and that sort of thing, right?
Do you want to because we've got hopefully some high school students listening as well. Do you want to walk us through just in a bit more detail, what we're talking about there in terms of interviews, the grad program, and you're still at uni and you're studying for exams? Yeah. Do you want to kind of walk us through what that kind of, I guess, 3-month period looks like?
Yeah, for sure. So look, I can't remember the exact timings in terms of months, but it's quite a stressful, it is a stressful year. I think most people will say that, where, at the time, you're really trying not to let your grades slip as well. And obviously you've got that on forefront of your mind. And you've got a lot of assignments and whatever, other commitments you've got outside of work. And a lot of these job applications are very time consuming. If you're doing them properly, they can take a while just for one application, right? And I think a lot of the time you're sitting there and you're looking at these programs, and there's a lot of them you might want to apply for. And they're time consuming, especially if you kind of get through the process. If you get an interview, you're not going to just go in and with no effort, right? You want to actually...
Well, like you said with Unilever, it takes you a couple of days to prepare and really understand the business and make sure that you understand the business's purpose too.
Yeah, exactly right. So for me, luckily, I was in a position where I was able to choose a little bit. I was like, okay. So luckily for me, I got Unilever very early on, and then I also was applying for a few other roles, and I was like, actually, hold on, look, I think I'm going to go with Unilever. I think that's the one. So did an internship there for 4 months, which was fantastic. And yeah, basically the next year comes around, right? So you do your 3-4 months, you probably start in, I don't know, late November, December. And you'll probably go till about February, March. And then you'll be back at uni. And then I think a couple of months after that, the programs open up again. So at the time I was very lucky because I finished my Unilever internship in February. And basically got asked to come back on the program in about March. So if people can sort that out early, that's advisable, because otherwise it's just going to be a very stressful year.
That's certainly the dream, having a job lined up, and then you can just kind of not coast, but you can, in your last year of uni, you can just worry about uni rather than, I need a job after this. Yeah.
Or you've got the job, so you don't have to, you don't have to study late, you should, but that pressure's not there, right?
Yeah. Well, once you got the job, P's do get degrees after that.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I already had Unilever lined up, and then I stopped applying for programs because I had what I wanted. But then a couple of months went by, and I was like, man, I think I might, why don't I just consider going back to Melbourne as well? So I started applying again and luckily got an assessment centre for Lendlease. And look, I think for me, it wasn't something I was truly passionate about. It was more so wanting to kind of be in a certain location. And I think for me, when I identified that I had more passion for Unilever, and that's where I really wanted to work, I think it was a pretty easy decision.
Man, I think all of the things that you've spoken about today in terms of understanding what a business is really about, and then I guess calculating whether that fits in with what you're about. It sounds like you've done a lot of self-reflection over the time, and you've made some clear changes in terms of moving cities and unis as well. What's your process there? Do you consciously take time to be like, sit back and reflect and say, okay, I've learned X, Y, Z from this experience. What can I do next time?
Yeah. I think reflection is very important. I think for me, I was really lucky in the sense that I did some jobs that I really didn't want to do. So when I first moved to Sydney, I did a whole bunch of stuff. So I worked at this boutique consulting joint, and when I was there, I just didn't enjoy it very much at all. And I also worked, I worked in business development in tech, and again, I just hated it. I was there for 3 weeks.
What were the parts of these jobs that you didn't enjoy?
For me, it's just one of those things. I don't know if I'm the same as everyone else or maybe a little bit different, but for me, it's just very instant, right? You go through the induction, and for me, I was just I hate it. I just don't like it at all. And yeah, with the tech one, it was just a little bit of the sell, very very specific, right? But it was just very it was so salesy. It was selling a product that I could just tell people weren't around. And for me, I think there's great skills that you can learn in terms of selling and all that sort of thing. But for me, I just they're just people didn't like the product. And I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Oh, you're a very purpose-driven person, and I think that's really come out when you speak about Unilever and what we're talking about before in terms of Unilever being a good corporate citizen. So, and I completely understand why you didn't find those particular roles you've just talked about engaging, is because it lacked that underlying purpose.
Yeah, exactly right. So, back to the question, I think that's a big thing, purpose. So I'm always reflecting. For me, I'm just very, if I love something, I will be there all the time. You'll get 100%. But if I'm not really feeling it, I really struggle to kind of get there and go through the motions. So it's always just really reflecting on that. And it's am I really happy with what I'm doing?
And I think that's a really important point for particularly, well, at any stage, right? Even if you're at high school looking for a part-time job and you really hate it, it's I get that everyone needs to kind of get some money in the bank and pay for bills and all of that. I understand. But if you've got the choice to make a choice between a job that you hate and a job that you probably like a bit better, it's not so much only your peace of mind. It's you're not going to be a very good employee, like you're talking about, if you don't like it. Don't I guess waste everyone's time if you have a choice as well. Go and find something that you're passionate about and that you will be a productive part of that business, I think.
To take that a step further, Luke, I think you can also apply that same thinking to school. So if you're choosing your school subjects, and obviously in year 12 you got to do 5 subjects, so you can't get away from that. But if you're choosing your subjects, you should be thinking about which subjects do I actually enjoy going to class for. And on the employee point, it's the same with your teacher and your fellow students. You don't want to rock up to class and be an absolute brat or not pay attention and ruin everyone else's learning environment. So I think adopting that same mindset towards choosing your subjects is really important too.
No, I totally agree. Naveen, what would you have to say to kind of students coming through in high school or even university now that, might be thinking, oh, I'll just go and do the course that all my mates are doing? How did you go about discovering that you like finance, right? Or in your situation?
Yeah, look, I think, I think it's about putting in the time and just figuring it out. I don't know if you guys did the same thing, but I remember when I was coming out of uni, this is for a bit later, but I remember when I was coming out of uni, you're sitting on the pay scale and you're looking at the industry reports and you're like, oh, if I go into this, this is what the average is and all that sort of thing. But I think it's important to keep it very simple. It's do I like this or do I not like this? And if you don't like it, you probably shouldn't, go in any deeper. So that's kind of my advice. But I think before you do that, I think that, the 3 years or however long it is at uni, 5 years, I think one of the things I did was I just got stuck into everything. Like did finance, did sales, business development, did consulting.
These are in your part-time jobs, I'm guessing, that you're talking about?
Yeah, so just internships and part-time jobs, and just a lot of exposure to different industries and different businesses. And, along the way, I think you figure out what works for you, what doesn't, what you like and what you don't like.
How do you go about that, right? Like, so say you're a first year uni student, or this can be anyone, like if you're doing a trade apprenticeship and you need some experience or whatever it might be, like how did you go about being like, oh, I need to go get some experience with this particular skill? Did you think about, I need to go and get a job in retail or in hospitality so I can talk to people? Like, what was the thinking there?
Yeah. So look, a lot of it is like, in my opinion, like for me anyway, it was a lot of trial and error, right? Like you're talking to your mates and I'm sure if you're in business, you will have heard about it. Like a lot of people are talking about management consulting, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I don't really know what that is. Or, people are talking about finance, and obviously these are very broad topics, but you're sitting there and you're like, oh, well, I might be interested in this. And like, how are you going to know? If you don't have a crack. And I think, especially when you're making that decision at the end, right, you don't want to have, you don't want to have been sitting in lecture theatres for 3 years, you haven't got any experience, and you need to pick an industry. Like, how are you going to do that with any, any accuracy in a way? Like, if you don't know, if you've got no work experience or you don't know what any of it's about. I think a lot of people do that. And nothing against that, but I just think to make the best decision, like you need to have some insights that you've probably generated on your own.
With that, did you make an effort to talk to different people in different industries? And if you did, how'd you go about that? Yeah.
So, look, I think, I don't know how long LinkedIn's been around, but like when I was in, I'm not that old, but
back in the day,
yeah, like back in like 2015 or 2014, I'm pretty sure LinkedIn was around.
Yeah, it was around.
Yeah, I didn't have one back then, so I wasn't really reaching out to people, like at the time, it's a bit strange, right? You're like a second year grad, you don't really know what you're doing, and like at that time, I was like, if I do reach out to someone, like, do I even know enough to kind of have a conversation? So that's a bit of a worry. But I think, I think one of the things to do is really just talk to mates as well. Like talk to mates, do a lot of research, and you actually learn a lot. And even if you're getting to a point where you can have a conversation with someone in industry, that's the point you want to try and get to. So just learn as much as you can, have a working knowledge of these things, and then you might be able to reach out to people. I personally didn't. I feel like I was quite lucky, but like I would encourage it, I guess.
And if you had, say, hypothetically, you had to do that today, how would you go about doing that? Reaching out to someone and making sure you're ready to have a conversation.
Yeah, look, I think if you're going to reach out to someone, obviously know what you're talking about. I think that's first and foremost. And look, like I think it's pretty common now. So if you're thinking about reaching out to someone and you're a bit worried, everyone's doing it. So reach out. Like, don't worry about it. What's the worst that can happen? They don't open it, or they see it and they forget. Like, who cares?
And on that, mate, I think when you say know what you're talking about, you might like put a hypothetical around it, right? Like, say you're interested in your situation, finance, and you go, oh, I want to get a job at Unilever. Found a person in a management position on LinkedIn. What do I say to them? It's like, don't stress that you don't know everything about Unilever. I think what you're referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you know exactly what you're interested in, and you've thought about why you're reaching out to that person. It's because I want to get information about the grad program, or about working in that team, or about something specific, and make sure that you've thought about all of that stuff rather than hey man, I saw you work at Unilever. Like, can we have a chat? That's not productive.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, again, back to like reflecting, self-reflecting. It's like, what do I want out of this? What's this conversation for? And yeah, exactly right. Going in there with like a strategy, exactly what you want to get out of it. And yeah, not wasting someone's time.
Oh, cool. Mate, on that, in terms of the reflecting, it sounds like you're one to.
And so one more thing.
Yeah, you go for
it. I saw something the other day, right? On LinkedIn, and it was just about like, look, even if you're just reaching out to someone, and you guys have a chat, like try form a bit of a relationship. Like I've seen, saw this post where someone was like, yeah, I think he was like a CEO or something. And a lot of people just reaching out, and he's kind of going, look, hey, like, thanks for the message. I'm not really in a position to help you right now, that sort of thing. And like just left on scene. And it's like, if you reach out to someone and they can't help you at that moment, or they're busy or whatever, right? Doesn't mean that it's not one of those things where you reach out, they can't help you and that's it. Try form a bit of a connection, right? Because like, that's what it's about, your networking.
Oh, mate, on that, I think that's a really good point. And the whole point about networking, we've spoken about this quite a bit on the show already, but there seems to be this kind of greasy perspective on networking, particularly from people early on in their career, but it becomes really important. And you hit the nail on the head. It's about a relationship, right? It's not about, hey, can you come and help me for this particular thing right now? And then we never see each other again. It's about establishing that relationship. And I think the best bit of advice I got, I can't remember who it was from, someone at work, they said the first point should be, what can I do for you? And even if you're a junior person, right, I think a good example of that is, if you're trying to reach out to someone that's a bit more senior at another organization and you know that they're working in a particular area, it might be, hey, look at this article that I found that has to do with your competitor or something like that. Like, it just shows that you've really thought about what they're doing and you're immediately trying to add some value to their day rather than just taking immediately. So I think it's super point.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than you ask a question, someone's taking the time out of their day to answer it, and try and help you, and you just get ghosted.
Yeah. No, for sure. All right. Well, on that, mate, let's kind of start to wrap up. I think you've given us a lot of great insight into obviously Unilever and then the process of coming through the university environment. Do you want to leave the listeners in either high school or in uni, kids that are, I guess, figuring out what they want to do or know what they want to do, and that might be getting into a place like Unilever? What's some advice that you would be keen to leave them that you might have ignored when you were younger and now you think is really valuable?
Yeah. I think the key one's to like find your own path. Don't necessarily follow the herd. And obviously, I think based on my story, I think I've definitely done that, and my path could have been a bit easier if I hadn't done that. And the second one is just to really just enjoy the process through uni and even school. Just really enjoy it and do what you love. Like if you're sitting there in classes and you're not enjoying it, are you really doing what you're supposed to be doing? That's a big one. And I think also the other one is like I think this is, we probably haven't spoken about it too much, but, at uni, it's all about your grades and how much do you know, and, you're trying to be the smartest person in the room in a way. But when you come into work, it's just about being a good fit, getting on with everyone, working collaboratively to, find the best solution. So I think, don't worry about, just live in the now and don't worry about, the workforce too much, because you'll find your way when you get in, and, it's just about coming into work every day and just being your best self. So that's kind of my advice.
Naveen, I think that's awesome advice and a great place to leave it, mate. So thanks for coming on the show today. We really appreciate you talking about Unilever, your experience, and how people need to find what interests them and make sure they're not following the herd.
I appreciate that, boys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate. I'd give you a standing ovation for that last sentence if I could. Really good advice and appreciate the time.